Welcome to this edition of Missing Briefs. This is a podcast where we unveil the untold business stories of lawyers and their triumphs and trials. The objective, as always, is to explore and narrate the compelling stories or briefs of lawyers who have experienced significant challenges and successes in the business of law. We explore what were some of their gaps, what were they missing, what do they wish that they'd known. I'm Dominic of Elevate Business Coaching. And with me today is
Bob Furlong in the Bullfinch Group.
And it's our pleasure today to welcome Peter Herbst, the founder and owner of the Herbst Law Group, a premier estate planning firm based right here in Braintree, Massachusetts. The Herbst Law Group specializes in estate planning, estate and trust administration, and elder law services, such as mass health and Medicaid planning. Peter, it's great to have you with us today.
And thank you for having me. I look forward to our conversation.
So, Peter, when did you first know that you wanted to become an attorney?
My father was an attorney. He actually just retired last year. And so I don't think I can pinpoint a first moment that I knew I was going to be an attorney. I just, throughout my life, I watched him work with clients and help people and just knew that that was something that I wanted to do as well.
Interesting. So I'm always curious, Peter, when I'm speaking with lawyers about how they got into the area of law. So tell me, how did you end up in the estate planning field?
Well, initially, probably like a lot of lawyers, I went through a couple changes. I was an environmental science major in college, so I went on to what was, and I think still is, one of the best environmental law schools in the country, Vermont Law School. And I can remember the moment where I was deep in a class one day, and I think the professor could tell that a lot of us were bored out of our mind. And the professor said, for all you environmental attorneys, you better love administrative law, which was the class, because that's what you do as an environmental lawyer. And I remember just like, I want out. I don't want to do this. It was a Chevron analysis of a federal regulation. It was mind-numbingly boring. I steered towards what my father does for work, which is real estate and land use development. And when I graduated law school, I practiced in that field for 3 years. But it was actually during that 3-year period where we did some basic estate planning in that office. And the case that I'll never forget was I met with a woman who had just lost her husband. He was maybe 29 or 30 years old, and they had actually done a will, which for that population group, it's actually not that common. I think the statistics are like less than 10% of people have it. But she came into that initial meeting and she had a will, and her husband had died in a crash that he had caused while on a motorcycle, and the other driver was killed. And they sued the estate for a wrongful death claim, which if you don't have enough liability insurance, the estate can be exposed to liability on that. And the problem was that husband bought the house before they got married, and it was just in his name. And so even though she pulled out the will and said, I get everything, I had to be the person that first told her creditors are going to be able to come after his assets first. And she lost the house. She had to move out. And that was an eye-opening experience to me, because I kept thinking, they thought they did what was right. They put a will together, but estate planning is looking at the big picture and looking at all of their assets. And I know we drive a lot of our prospective clients nuts because we make them fill out an asset sheet for us. And when they do that, and when we see the primary residence held just by one spouse, yeah, we put together a will for them, but we also put together a deed where we make that house a joint marital asset so that if one of them dies, I actually don't want to use that will. If one of them dies, I want property to go automatically by operation of law directly to the surviving spouse and bypass probate so that we bypass creditors of the probate estate. So that case was probably 2006. And that was the moment when I was like, wow, estate planning, you can actually do some really amazing things for people. Um, but you do have to look at the big picture. And it's not just about, let's put together a simple will and get it signed. You have to look at every asset.
Well, that's a really great story, and thank you for sharing that. When you first graduated from law school and passed the bar, who did you work with first? Who's your first employer?
I worked for my dad first. It was 2005, and that, if you can remember what that was like, we had a huge real estate uh, transactional time period. And so we did a lot of buying and selling real estate, residential, as well as some commercial. And we also worked on some massive land use development projects during that time period. Just in those 3 years, I did the local approvals on a Stop and Shop, a Target. We worked on an 18-hole golf course with residential development. So it was great. But by 2008, when the market crashed, I realized that if I stayed in that practice area, I was going to be in a boom bust cycle for my entire career.
Mhm.
And I had already started to really enjoy estate planning. And so my wife and I moved to Braintree at that point. My dad's practice was in Connecticut. We moved to Massachusetts because she had a great job offer. And I started doing estate planning pretty much full on in 2008.
Perfect. So you came out of law school 2005. You begin working with your dad. You go through the boom and the bust. You move. Uh, so when you decided to start your practice, what year did you start your practice?
Um, I left a larger firm in 2014 um, and went off on my own. At that point, I did have another attorney that was with me, but the goal was to be on my own.
Okay. So pretty much 11 years on your own. What are some of the challenges that you encountered when you made that decision? Okay, I'm gonna venture out there. What are some of the challenges that you've experienced when just venturing out on your own?
Um, well, it's a big transition going from the role of an associate in a larger firm to being a business owner in a law firm. And one of the big challenges that I have is that if I look at my calendar for the week, the two things that I really enjoy doing are sitting down in a conference room and just meeting with a client and going through all their issues. And then I also really like doing the work of being a lawyer, whether it's drafting a trust or being knee deep inside of an estate tax return and trying to figure out how to lower somebody's tax bill. I enjoy that work. And as a business owner, I can't do that all the time. And I have to do this terrible thing called delegation. And I have to train other people to do that work for me so that I'm just reviewing it and not actually doing it myself. Um, so there's a constant struggle. Literally every day as I put together my to-do list, it's always I got to ask myself, should this be on my list or should it be? We have 5 members of the team now, so I have to figure out who to get stuff to and try not to do it all myself. That's a constant struggle.
And that comes into my next question is really related to, if you could go back to your younger self 11 years ago and could you share three things that you would have done differently, or three kind of like good points that you wish you'd known when you started your practice?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to reuse the delegation as one because it's such a major issue, um, and learn to do that earlier on. The second would be, I mean, this is really nitty gritty, but um, we are uh, last couple of years trying to document procedures and
Mm.
having a systemized approach to handling everything. And I would have taken that on earlier, so that it cuts down on training time for employees. And it's one way that we can actually make sure that if I'm going to delegate something, at least I know that someone's going to take those 10 steps, that those are the 10 steps I want people to take. They're not going to take shortcuts, and I've got it documented for them. So documentation and taking that on earlier would be number two. Um, and then I think number three would just be, um, uh, well, three and four would be staffing and office space. So staffing, I have some really great employees, and I guess I wish hired them sooner. You know, it's so scary when you're starting off to add payroll obligations, and the employees that I've got are just awesome. So it's, you know, if they had joined me earlier, I wonder where I'd be now. Um, so that would be something. And then from an office space, we had a nice space that I was so comfortable in, and I didn't want to move. And it was actually my employees who pushed me to move into this space that we've been
Mhm.
in for a year. And I guess I didn't realize how some clients could not stand the parking, because almost every time I meet a new client, they say, "Oh, we love your new space, and parking is so easy." I'm like, "Oh, was parking really that bad at the old office? I guess it was."
Okay,
So moved
so
earlier.
the three things, one was the delegation,
Systems,
yeah, systems or documentation, right? And then
hire sooner and
yeah,
move and new office space. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Those are all good ones, and I got to congratulate you. It sounds like you have a tremendous team that are working with you, and that's a game changer and a differentiator. So I congratulate you
Yeah.
on being able to figure that part out. Uh, let's talk a little bit about referrals. So, you know, many of the attorneys that I speak to, I'm always asking them, you know, how do you find your business? And they talk about referrals. Tell me, how is it that you like to be introduced to prospective clients or referrals?
Um, like the mechanics of, we certainly get a lot of uh, other professionals who will just put me on an email chain with their
Mhm.
clients. And for a lot of people, that does work. Uh, I also enjoy, um, uh, advisors will just set up meetings here with their client and bring me into that. So that can be a great way, because I know there's this is not the most enjoyable subject matter to talk about, and there's a barrier. um, you know, I frequently ask clients, how did you get here? And they'll say, well, my financial advisor has been telling me to do this for 7 years. You know, they didn't, this isn't just, they can just tell them to call me and they do it. They usually need some incentive to do it. But um, certainly, from the financial advisors, CPAs, and other professionals, that is a huge amount of our incoming um, leads. And then we're just fortunate that uh, the next big group is coming from referrals from existing clients. I met with somebody Friday who said that it was the doctor down the street that referred them. And then they looked at me and they said, and we had dinner with our neighbors last week, and I guess they're actually meeting with you too in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So I was like, that's great. Thank you very much.
that's great.
It's terrific.
Peter, it's been a real pleasure having you on this show and learning more about how you work and the kind of clients you like to work with and your process and your team. Thank you so much for coming on. think we've really learned a couple things about Peter, haven't we, Dominic?
Certainly have, and I could see you nodding when Peter was mentioning about financial advisors and telling their clients for 7 years, you really need to do this.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Uh, what's the best way for folks, maybe if they're listening, maybe you've struck a chord in something, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you, Peter?
Um, to give our office a call, we do have an online scheduler, but I think calling the office is the best. We've got Christine who will walk you through the intake process, and we offer a initial complimentary meeting where we do ask you to do some homework and send that in ahead of time. And then during that meeting, we can dive right in and start talking about planning concepts. And on all of our estate planning, we're able to quote people a fixed fee at the end of that meeting when we know what's going to work for them as far as their estate plan. So I think um, that's nice. A lot of people appreciate that because they know before they even hire me what their cost is going to be. Um, and and then I'll say that the most common thing people say to me after they sign their documents and they walk out, it happened at my 10 o'clock this morning. They say, "I feel so much better."
Right.
It really does give you peace of mind knowing that this is in place.
That's terrific. And there you are. You're like a doctor. I feel so much better after coming to. So thank you for that. And thank you to all those that have listened in to Missing Briefs today, where we unveil the untold business stories of lawyers, their triumphs and their trials. If you have an interesting story to tell about your triumphs and trials of owning your own law firm, or maybe you know somebody else that does, please get in touch with us. I'm Dominic Grew, and with me, as always, is my good friend.
Bob Furlong.
And until we meet again, thank you.
Thank you.